or has it been appropriately noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Here.
Alderman Ellis. Here. Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Zwart.
Here.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Miller.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
First item is the approval of the meeting minutes from August 7th, 2018. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes passed. Comments and suggestions from citizens. If anybody has anything they'd like to say on any subject, please fill out one of the cards. Come on up. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda is licenses, so we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, call the roll.
Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg. Alderman Zwart. Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, first item under protection and welfare, we have the consider and act on a resolution for schematic design and project budget for new public safety facility. We need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second. Chief?
Thank you. We'd like to start out today with a brief PowerPoint presentation to go through the history of the police department, a little bit on the city, and then the process that we've gone through to get to this point today. Our first picture is a picture of the floor plan of the police department, 1883, before the addition was put on in 1886, before the addition was put on in 1983. History, the Oconomowoc Police Department has been at City Hall since 1886. City Hall was remodeled and expanded in 1983. The police department's been in the same spot for about 35 years, has 4,500 square feet in City Hall, which includes the police operations dispatch, our holding area, garage, and Sally Port. We also have off-site locations for vehicle impound, large evidence storage, and police department equipment storage. Since 1983, the city has grown. Our population has almost doubled from 9,900 to about 17,000. Our area in square miles has almost doubled from 6.3 square miles to 12.27. And the miles of street in the city has gone from 40.58 to 87.23. As far as the police operations and the future of the police department, in 2003, a space needs study was done. At that time, in 2003, they said our existing need was for about 20,700 square feet. They projected our need for 2020 to be 29,400 square feet, and that did not include the Lake Country Municipal Court. In 2016, we did a 5-year strategic staffing study. Our current staffing, which involves sworn, dispatch, and clerical staff, is 30 full-time employees and 18 part-time employees. The study recommended staffing levels by 2021 to increase by 14 full-time sworn positions and 2 full-time civilian positions. In 2017, we had the space needs study done by WSM, who projected our need of 38,600 square feet that would serve the city for the next 25 years, out to about 2040. We've talked in the past about our existing station deficiencies, our officer safety and confidentiality. Prisoners intermingle with our police operations. We share our restrooms with our prisoners. All this leads to inefficiencies and inadequacies throughout the police department, especially in our evidentiary chain of custody, packaging, and processing. We lack operational and specialized space, which results in intermingling of operations and lack of confidentiality. We don't have a conference room. We don't have a training room. We have an inadequate IT space and security, lack of indoor squad parking. Impound vehicles, evidentiary vehicles, bike and bulk items are stored in various locations in the city. We lack public parking, and we lack a dedicated government emergency management location. In 2016, the council recognized the need to invest in an expanded facility. We evaluated building new versus reusing an existing facility. We evaluated multiple sites around the city over the next 16 months, and ultimately the Common Council selected the former Century site. The purchase process began in August 2017, and the city closed on the property in February 2018. Advantages of this site include the size of the building and the lot. We're reusing an underutilized building and investing in a corridor. The location, the relocation of employee, squad, and customer parking out of the downtown, which will open up much needed parking. And the cost, reusing the building saves approximately $2 million from the project. The Lake Country Municipal Court has resided in City Hall since 1988, serves 18 communities with additional communities expressing interest in joining. In 2017, the Municipal Court participated in our needs assessment study. In 2018, the Lake Country Municipal Court Operations Committee worked with the city to define needed space. August 2018, the Court Operations Committee discussed the options for location of the Lake Country Municipal Court and determined that Oconomowoc new public safety facility would be the best location for the court to be. They provided a letter of recommendation to the member and contract communities to move with the City of Oconomowoc Police Department. The lease rate will stay about the same. When the Lake Country Municipal Court goes over to a new facility, it goes from $9.80 per square foot to approximately $10.12 per square foot. Court's requested space will increase from approximately 2,465 square feet to about 5,713 square feet. That includes upsizing a multi-purpose room to the capacity of 150. On August 30th, the Lake Country Municipal Court Administrative Committee voted unanimously to move the court to the new public safety facility. The process we've gone through, cost estimates were presented to the Committee of the Whole on June 13th, 2017 by WSM in the amount of $13,181,000. That did not include the cost of an expanded IT room. On June 20th, 2017, the Common Council approved the 2018 Capital Improvement Plan, which earmarked $10 million for the new public safety facility. That did not include the expanded IT room. In May 2018, the council approved $480,000 contract for FGM to do the design of the new public safety facility. Since that time, special committee was established, which included the mayor, Protection and Welfare Commission members, city administrators, the chief, and the director of public works. We've had committee meetings. We've had several staff working meetings with FGM, and we've gone on tours of different facilities. The Protection and Welfare Committee in June 2018 was presented with a schematic design and probable project cost estimate that included the PD, the court, and the IT room. That was $12,261,180. There were no changes recommended, but feedback was to minimize the impact on the tax bill. July 2018, the Committee of the Whole and the Common Council was presented with the same schematic design and probable project estimate, which included the PD, court, and IT room at $12,261,180. Financing options were presented to minimize or lessen the tax impact. Staff was directed to find reductions to get the cost closer to $10 million, which we've worked on over the last several weeks. In summary, this has been a multi-year process. Much thought and deliberation has gone into it. The project will ensure public safety needs are met for the community for the next 25 years and the police department. It's a growing community, which means there'll be additional demands put on public safety in the community. We've been cost conscious with our process. We've looked at reusing an existing building, which saved taxpayers an estimated $2 million. In the last several weeks, we looked at alternatives to remove $1,152,100 from the project and a financing plan to smooth the impact on taxpayers, which includes 2 years borrowing, alternate revenue sources, and impact fees. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Wright from FGM.
Thank you, Chief. Pull up. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. I'm Brian Wright with FGM Architects. With me is Luis Kowalczyk and Andrew Mayo as well. We have the privilege of working with your team, and we're very pleased to come today with some PowerPoint that represents the action that we've taken since the last meeting, discussion on level of finishes, as well as some detention furnishes, just so everyone has a base understanding of what makes a police station different from other building types. Our process, our estimate. The city will present financing model. We then have a site plan and adjacencies and an exterior expression. So what we've done since the last meeting is we were challenged by this group to review the budget and the space needs, which we did, and with your staff, we've done a good job of verifying the space needs further, as well as tweaking the budget with a better range, more in keeping with what some of the goals were. And we've identified level of finishes with the buildings. We've done tours of buildings, as the chief has mentioned, to get a good understanding of what kind of materials would go in the building that are cost effective. We also received an estimate from our partner firm, Camozzi Construction, to get an independent look at the budget to make sure that we're all on the same page. We had a roof condition analysis done to make sure that we're addressing any needs that might happen on the roof adequately. We looked at white spacing areas, which means leaving some areas undeveloped, as well as updated the documents. So a little note on the standard level of finishes. One of our models that we look at is for civic buildings is to be very durable and low maintenance products, so that the maintenance for the life of the building is lower. We do look at the fact that this is a 24/7 operation, so we do look at things like porcelain tile in the lobby and the corridor leading to the court space, again, to minimize maintenance. We do have lockers that are durable for the police as well as other material, but the other note is that there's nothing, this is not a Taj Mahal, there's nothing glamorous necessarily about any of this material. It's good, durable, civic material. In fact, in some of the police areas, we actually add vinyl wall protection at intersections as well as corner guards to make sure that this material will last and protect your investment in this facility. One area that is a little bit more expensive, of course, is the detention zone. And as you can see from the pictures, we do have detention epoxy floors. We have block walls that are filled solid with grout. We do have these, obviously this is a very strong and durable environment as it needs to be. And that adds to cost in that particular zone of the building. So it's not just an office building build out, it's quite a different animal. One thing that's also unique, we've done a lot of buildings where we have done adaptive reuse. And in regards to turning a building of this sort into a police station, we are able to use the shell. However, you can see in the photographs that when we put in new restrooms and trench drains, et cetera, that we do need to remove a lot of the slab. So there is, at first glance, you may think that the building could be very inexpensive, but there are some items that need attention, like that floor slab. However, in the big picture, there's still, as you can see at the bottom, almost a $2 million savings for keeping that shell. So, in our opinion, it's a very good method to provide a new police station. Last time we were here, we presented hard costs and soft costs for a total of $12.21 million, or 261, $12,261,000. This council said sharpen the pencil and go back and take another look, which we did, as I've explained. We were able to find some savings, so instead of being at 8.7 million in cost of construction, we're down around 8.2. The soft costs did not change, so our total project budget for construction is 9 million, just over 9 million. Then you add in the land and some site costs for a total grand total project of 11,247. So as the chief mentioned, we were able to provide quite a bit of savings. How did we get there? Well, we made some changes. We took a look at systems and materials, as I mentioned, and one of the areas we looked was the HVAC system. We always look at a good, better, best scenario. In this case, we feel that we have a very adequate HVAC system, and that by modifying that system, we're looking at around $500,000 in saving. We removed a fire pump from the budget because there's adequate water pressure there. We had a sort of a placeholder in the budget. High-density storage, we were able to take out. Then we looked at some other areas, and we identified epoxy flooring in the garage area at $17,000, and we also removed site work, as I mentioned earlier. We also looked to clarify some of the code areas. We do have hardened lockup areas per Wisconsin Department of Corrections code, as well as the International Building Code for the hardened lockup area. In the lockup area, we did change 2 of the rooms to a mesh front, but we still have 1 cell door. We removed a partition from the multi-purpose room and created some more green space by relocating the impound parking. When you add all that up, it leads you to this financing plan budget.
We take a look at the financing plan. What we need to do is look at our available funding sources. So the biggest funding source for this, of course, will be debt, and that would be $10,101,570. That would be debt that would be paid for through the tax levy. Then we look at the municipal court space and their 20-year lease. Their space would bring in about $635,500 through lease payments. That dollar amount would also be borrowed, but the debt service would be paid with the lease payments. The next part is the increased size of the centralized IT room. This is a citywide room and it will be paid for through cash that we have in the technology fund. And then the last piece is the project contingency. And we plan to cash fund that with money that we have currently as a cash balance in our police impact funds and also the proceeds from the Rockwell Street sale. Those are cash funds that we have on hand. The total project budget, as you said, $11,247,000. When we take a look at that $10 million borrowing and how that impacts our tax levy or our taxpayers, first of all, as I stated before, I'd like to do this borrowing over 2 years for a couple of reasons. The first being that keeping our borrowing under $10 million, which would be for this project and other projects that we have during the year, affords us a better interest rate. And second of all, we don't need all the money right at the start of the project, so it's okay for us to borrow it over 2 years. It also helps step into the amount of impact that mill rate would have on the average taxpayer. So we'd look at borrowing half of it, or about $5 million the first year, and that would increase the mill rate for the PD about 17 cents on our mill rate, or about $37 on the average home. The second year, we would borrow the remaining $5.1 million, and that would add an additional 17 cents to the mill rate for the total build-out cost of about $75 or $76 to the average taxpayer. And we look at that cost to the average taxpayer. Another way that we can mitigate those costs or make them lower is to look at the future impact fees that we'll be collecting for the police department. The new PD, it has been identified that about 58% of the new PD can be paid for through impact fees. So as we collect those impact fees during the year, we can use those funds to help pay that debt service, which would mean less dollars on the tax levy. Also, we're looking to the sale of the former YMCA site to happen sometime yet this year. Once that happens, and hopefully it would happen before our second borrowing, we could reduce that second borrowing about $450,000, which would reduce the mill rate from 17 cents to about 15 cents that year. So a couple of cents on the mill rate, or $4 on the average home.
Thank you. So in terms of the breakdown of the building, we're probably around, or we're looking at around 23,000 square feet for police operations. The dedicated court space is around 2,500. The multi-purpose room is 2,200. and a garage of 11,800 for a total of 39,800 square feet. And in terms of the first floor plan, we presented this last time. We did make some changes per the council's recommendation in regards to the garage area, where we broke down some of the spaces further in terms of seizure bike areas, identifying the number of cars that are needed, as well as evidence areas as well. In terms of the white space, there was a question in regards to leaving some areas blank. And the reality of a building where there's a shell and removing space from that, we end up having to put walls around a space that's already built. So the savings are not as great as one might think. So we did identify in the garage area perhaps 1,000 square feet, which could yield around $12,000 of white spacing. There would be more slab work in the future if that were ever converted, because that elevation's at a different height and the trench drain would need to be extended. We also looked at the site plan. If you look at the very top, there's a waterfront green space where we would remove some parking stalls and create more green space at that end of the site, as well as and so in terms of the site plan, what we're talking about is really only modifying some areas that are immediately adjacent to the perimeter of the building, in addition to creating a new entry, which is here. The idea behind this sketch or image is to have the building no longer look like a grocery store, but add some columns and a canopy and some letters that identify it as a municipal building, and the columns create a more civic presence. On the west elevation, what we're looking at are creating some openings in the patrol operations side so that they could have some natural daylight. So here we are today, September 4th, presenting. If we're successful to move forward, we would draw through the rest of this year, bid in January, and then it would be a year construction. Based on the feedback we're getting from Camozzi Construction, January is a really good time to bid. It's a good climate. This is an indoor job, which will be very attractive for firms in winter, as well as the fact that a bulk of the winter bidding is schoolwork related, and that bubble will have passed, so it falls into a relatively good position in terms of people looking to be aggressive on bids. With that, I thank you.
You could go back to the the page where the prices were side by side. It was pointed out in committee that the one price went up on the hardened space. I'd just like you to explain the reason why that is.
Yes. So the programmatic budget was put together by our team early on in the project, and then we invited Camozzi Construction to take a tighter look. We gave them the set of the drawings as well as everything that we've produced, and they took a look at creating this budget over here, which is the schematic budget. So you could see the garage space, the numbers were pretty close. The general spaces, they found more savings than we had anticipated. However, in the hardened space, they took another look at it, and based on what they're seeing with the jobs that they're bidding right now, that particular number went up a little bit. So what we did as part of our due diligence was to bring in an independent, third party to really make sure that we're getting these numbers right, because they are important. And so that number there went up. Again, I would point out that the number immediately above it went considerably down. So that's the value of bringing somebody else
And
on
I think
board.
that's important to show because, the numbers that you had estimated were, what you had estimated, but when someone looked at it closer, they said, yeah, some is lower, but some is higher. So I thought that was very good. Okay.
Right.
Let's open it up for discussion. Kevin?
In the site modification, go back to the same screen.
This one?
No. Back to the one that you would, with the numbers. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right before the grand total projection budget?
Sure. Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. You're showing 600,000, whereas they are showing 100,000. What are we losing?
Well, one of the ideas behind in the first budget that we had was that there was a an idea to redo the parking lot in its entirety, remill it, redo it, as well as add a drive aisle through here, and that cost was around $600,000. What we then did as part of our cost-saving measures was to take a very close look at providing this group with as tight a budget as we could. And so we took that work out because that's not necessarily essential to the police functioning of this building. So down the road, there would be a need to redo that parking lot, but it's not imminent. So what we did do is we limited the parking lot work to that $100,000 that would go around the perimeter of the building here. In other words, the Sally Port, there's not a Sally Port there now, so we'd have to create a little drive aisle there. These colonnades are not there. And the colonnades are in the building budget, but the site work around it would need to be incorporated, as well as, you know, a little bit of work along here, as well as that waterfront green space which was requested.
So in that 100,000, there is the green space?
Correct.
And the outskirts of the building there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're on the site plan, which is good because that's where I wanted to start. We have the general schematic, but what we don't see is square footage in any of these areas. Where's the square footage information coming from for your bidding process moving forward?
Would you, so the next step is that we would take this floor plan and work with the team to identify the spaces of each area, break them down into rooms. Right now, they're just boxes, and they do represent spaces that we went through the space needs analysis for, so we do know how big they are. We left them off of here. Previously, we had like a little square footage underneath each little zone, which we've left off. The next step will be to break down that room, much like this space would be a big rectangle, and then we'd identify this area as the seating, and this area as the council area, and that's really the next step.
Go back to the last slide where it kind of expands out more. One of my concerns with this process, since we started this part of the process, is that I think we've been taking a building that is 39,000 square feet in size and filling it out with a police station. And so a couple questions I have, just initially, we have a massive garage space that's huge for way more cars and vehicles than we have. We have 2 break rooms. We have a break room at dispatch and a break room up here. Mm-hmm. We have a fitness/tactical section, which was a huge part of my problem with the WSM study, is the tens of thousands of dollars used to build out a space for a fitness facility when we have half a dozen in town. We also have another little blue room here by custody and processing. What is that? Is that just build out space for something? Nothing? You see what I'm saying?
Yep, you're almost there.
Oh, this right here? Oh, that's roll call. It's part of the operations investigation area. So the idea there is that immediately upon entry, we have the patrol division reporting for roll call or going into their office space. So the idea is that it's centrally located on a main corridor. So you asked a couple questions. In regards to the garage, there's actually the current number of squad vehicles plus 1. And then what we did is we broke down the space further so that the boats are inside, motorcycle, seized bike cage, as well as this mud area. So the cars would come in here, they would park, and then if they had a wet raincoat or muddy boots, whatever, et cetera, we have a little area that they would put that in and then move in. The idea that the building is 39,000 square feet, and miraculously we came up with a program that with 39,800 square feet is, of course, a very good curiosity. The reality is the program was actually larger than 39,800 square feet, and we actually tweaked it internally to fit the building. Now, we do have in each area a desk or a certain area so that you don't need to expand anytime soon. So we did leave, let's say, if you needed 5 desks, well, the way Office Systems Furniture works, you would probably build 6 desks because of the way that they go. And then you have accommodated just that little bit of future growth. so that you're not immediately shoehorned into this thing. So believe it or not, we actually worked very hard to make it fit that space.
Okay, so I'm not trying to get a gotcha moment here. I don't know what program you're referring to.
Well, it was internal, you know.
Your program.
Yeah, when we met with the group, when we met internally in our office, we actually came up with something a little bit larger. And then we said, well, you know, we're not going to add on to this building. So we need to work within the parameters of the space that it is.
Because the WSM space study only had the total with the courts and the multipurpose room, fitness center, and multiple break rooms and very large office space. That grand total was only 38,600. So your program, when you initially started thinking about your program, you created a program even larger than the footprint of the building, and then you had to squish it down, is what you're telling me?
Well, I mean, squish is probably an exaggeration, but the idea is that we knew the size of the building, and so we definitely worked within the footprint of the building to make it work. In other words, could the spaces have been bigger? They could have. We could have added more future growth and other things like that, which we pared back, not only for budgetary reasons, but also because of the size of the existing building.
What is the square footage cost to build out a fitness room? Do you know what
Well,
the
what
square
we've
footage
actually
cost?
done, what we've actually done here with the fitness room is we've identified it to be blanked out, and that the furniture, equipment, or the fixtures would be purchased from a different source.
Okay, we're talking about the equipment now. We're talking about the workout equipment. But you're going to build that space out, right? It's going to have walls. It's going to have.
Right. Currently,
gonna have carpet.
Currently, it is you know, the back of the grocery store.
And that's 199, correct? Is your square footage cost?
Our general square footage cost is what we're saying is that if you took this
196?
196,
Okay.
I don't have the square footage in front of me, but we would arrive at that number. And what is true about fitness centers for police is that there's a lot of training that they can do in-house besides just quote-unquote working out, lifting weights. That what they can actually do is get on their cardio and then immediately come into the garage or the court space where we have a room right here for mat storage, lay out some mats and do defensive tactical training. And what you do here is you get your cardio up so that you're, from a fitness side, you're under stress, you're under duress. So that it's not just, you're calm, you're not entering that environment in a calm way. You get your heart rate up so that you can come over into that space and train a little bit more realistically.
Okay.
So there is definitely value besides just lifting weights.
Look, I don't want you to explain to me why you think we need to have a fitness center, okay? What I want to know is we've got things in here that are very expensive. The square footage for the fitness space, if it's 560 square feet, which is what was in the WSM study, that's $110,000 to build that space out, okay? Maybe there's a great reason to have a fitness center. I don't care, okay? My point is we have a fitness center where we're going to do tactical training. We have a multi-purpose room where we're going to do more training, okay? We have multiple break rooms. We have other space that doesn't appear to be used right now. And I'm trying to figure out from the numbers I'm looking at where the square footage is coming from. Is it coming from the WSM study, or is this more internal stuff that we haven't seen yet?
No, we did a space needs analysis.
Okay, and what about the locker rooms? How much square foot for both sets of locker rooms? Do we know?
Sure, hold on.
So the WSM study had 1,730 square feet. Is that close to what you think you're at?
Okay, so we had, yeah, we're at 1,900.
1,900.
Yeah,
Is that for both of them?
correct. Yep.
Right.
So we have that's That 1,900 is the locker rooms and the fitness room, which is 636.
So the fitness center actually went up from the WSM study.
Well, the
Thi-
fitness
this
center,
is-
so the two locker rooms you had at 1,700,
Correct.
we actually reduced them to around 1,200. So
Okay,
that went, so that number went down.
So this is part of the problem with where we're at the process right now. Whatever document you're looking at, I don't understand why we don't have. If you've got square footage and you've got numbers and areas associated with these spaces, I don't know how we can vote on this without knowing what that is. Because these are the questions I'm thinking in my head, like, why do we have 2 break rooms when we're talking about a hallway distance? Why do we have a fitness tactical room and have a multi-purpose room with more tactical stuff? So, this continues to be refrained, and I'll say it over and over again. And we keep having to hear, 30 minutes of why we need a police station. I agree we need a new police station. Everybody on the council agrees we need a new police station. The problem is how we're getting there and why we're getting there. And that's the struggle I have here today, and I will continue to have. We're between just the break rooms and the locker rooms, we're at over $400,000, and we don't even know what the size of these rooms are gonna be. How much are we building out? So what do we need for admin right now? Do we need 2,000 square feet and we have 8,000 square feet in admin for, future growth of the city? I mean, those are the things I can't answer and I don't know. So I can't decide on a schematic when I don't know how much space we're actually needing for this stuff. So we had the WSM study, which was a flawed study. But the WSM study at least had what I think you're looking at, which is square footage
Yeah, we certainly,
associated with the schematics, which I haven't seen.
yeah,
And-
you're right, we absolutely did. And that, when you add up these program spaces, the next step is where do they go? And that's how we arrived at this document. So
And I'm not
all of that homework, if you will, is in this diagram.
So, and I'm not trying to fight with you on it, but you seem to be the most knowledgeable about answering the questions that I have, which is why we've got where we're at and why we're higher again than what we earmarked a year ago for this space. And I still am convinced that we built our building, we're trying to build a space to fit a building, and that may not be the best use of it. What's the total in your documents there, which again, we haven't seen? The court administration and the municipal multipurpose space, how much total is that? I had 4,838 square feet, is that right?
For say it again, the court?
Yeah, the court and the municipal court / multipurpose room.
It's on the presentation.
Well, that's the number I have, but I wanted to know if that's the same number that you've got.
Yeah.
That's the number I'm saying, 4838, if those are the numbers that were in your presentation. Yeah, I just added those two numbers together.
Okay, so when we did this, we have and this is a month ago, so things tweaked, right? So we were at like 2,200 square feet, and here we're saying we're at, and there may be some other pieces that are going into that. So we're saying 2,500 there, this document says 2,200 there. Circulation accounts is in there too.
Okay.
So those numbers are not jarring. Multi-purpose. So I guess what I'm also just trying to get at is that that's what went into the boxes that you see, is that the process was there. Whether we neglected to show it or not, I apologize,
right, no, that's okay.
but that is the process on how we got there.
So one of the concerns I've had since day one on the project two is whether the courts were coming with us. We finally found out 5 days ago, the courts do want to come. But now I think my concern is not whether the courts come, it's whether they should come. And that multi-purpose room, which we do not need, that was my discussion with the WSM study and the fallacies in that study. We do not need a 2,900 square foot multi-purpose room. And we have a $8.5 million community center right up the road with ample space where there's already spinning classes and everything else going on. This is not necessarily a question for you. This is more of my comments. But that space, without the equipment, without all the chairs and the mats and everything else is almost $1 million. And when we're trying to get this thing under budget, the question is, why do we need the courts to come over here? Why? They've got a space here that they're actually completely paying for and funded, and we won't ever have to pay anything. We did see some documents, and then I'll take a break because I know other people want to comment on what I'm said and what else is going on here. But the courts gave us, and we got a memo that right now they are in the black, and I believe they are running in the black. But if their rent is going to go up about $32,000, which is going to cover about $600,000 or so of the debt payments. But if they don't cover that, so if tickets go down or fee collection goes down, our communities would have to pay that difference that we currently don't have to do. So our community, the city of Economowoc, could potentially pay $10,000 a year for the space that they're renting, that they're just going to give back to us to rent. It just, there's something that doesn't make sense there, and we're spending $1 million on space we don't need. I do have more questions, but I'll take a break.
I think anytime there's a new building, there may be things like that, but the reality of a training space is that you can host training, and then you're not sending staff, to another facility with time and payroll and travel, which may even offset that cost. The square footage is 2,300 square foot. I think we had 2,296, so those are very close numbers. A lot of the communities where we've done these trainings, not only do they host the training, and again, your individuals could use it, but there are other departments that may also use this facility. This is really the largest space that you have. This would be considerably larger with, AV, et cetera. The other thing is that as a community outreach, a lot of communities have opened these up to some community groups, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, homeowners groups, and it's a really great outreach to the community. So
yeah, look, and again, I appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to convince
Yeah,
me
well,
why I should spend $11 million. I think
Okay.
more my purpose from the questions I've directed at you is the use of the space
Sure.
and what the square footage are, which we don't have in front of us. We've been told for a year that we need the multi-purpose room for training because we have to send people out for training, and we could bring training in-house. But at a cost of $450,000, I'm thinking we could send our police officers to training probably for the next 100 years and never have to spend $450,000 on training.
Matt, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to get opinions from everybody else too.
Yeah, that's
So if we
okay.
can just-
Do I only have the floor for a certain amount of time, though?
No, you can come
Okay.
back later, but I just. wanted to get
And I
other
said I
people-
will. I said I would.
Sure.
I wanted to,
I just want to get
address
other-
his
I don't
comments.
want to leave these guys alone over here.
yeah, no, I understand. I'm taking a break.
Chief, could you explain the reason for one of the reasons why the city doesn't want the court here again? I shouldn't say that, but some of the issues with security and some
Our
of their
biggest
concerns, because
concern is-
they've raised the concerns themselves.
Correct. The biggest concern is security. The court is the one that brought the security issue back in 2016 when they looked for Dutch doors on the courtroom to secure the courtroom. In 2018, they discussed having an armed guard here, an armed bailiff here on court days for 4 hours when the judge is here for court. So now they have an armed guard up here. Otherwise, we provide an unarmed community service officer. On a regular basis, we are up here dealing with people who are argumentative about citations they've received. We've been up here dealing with disorderly people in the court, disorderly people in the hallway. Sometimes it's just the mere presence of a uniform walking up here that calms a person down. But if we leave this facility and the court stays here, your security is going to become Mark Fry and Jason Gallo if he's here. So that's where we're going to be for security. You're going to go from 20 seconds for our staff. Yeah. You're going to go from 20 seconds from our staff running up here to maybe 5 minutes from us coming from the new facility or an officer on the street. Hopefully he's nearby.
And the courts would have to pay for that security, correct?
They already are.
They pay for the armed bailiff now, yes.
Okay, so that's a cost that they'd have, but it would be more if there's no police here. I mean, because it would be 24/7. Not 24/7, but it would be basically every day, right?
Correct.
Okay. Take comments from
Charlie?
Farley, do you have a
sorry.
question?
As long as Ron's up
Yeah,
here.
go ahead.
The emergency management part of this, where does that come into this building? We don't have an emergency management area right now.
We currently don't. Right now, we plan to use Conference Room 3 as our emergency management facility or location. We have some phones in a box that we would have to wire up to get to work in the event of an emergency. With the new facility, we'd set it up as an emergency management center. It'd be hardwired, so it'd just be a matter of plugging everything in that we needed.
So is that where the multipurpose room would also be
Correct, that would be
used
part of
for?
the multipurpose room.
Okay, I just want to go over this side,
That's
okay?
fine, yeah.
Lou?
Multipurpose room square footage?
It is
23.
2361, and we identified, you know, again, we've been moving forward with the documents here. So we are, this document said it was 2296. So
Okay.
we're 2,300 square feet.
So really, just kind of summarize, because we are bouncing around. We have space utilization, what we're talking about. We also will be, I would think, reviewing the cost as we move through this. We also will potentially be discussing the value of the land and the utilization of the land itself. Those three categories. As it applies, because we've been spending a lot of time on the space utilization, we have an EOC, multipurpose, and courtroom at the square footage that you mentioned. This question is for John at the community center, the large conference area, or do we have any spaces in the community center approximately that size?
But
The upper level of the community center has 3 areas. Excuse me. The carpeted area that we did some of our strategic planning work in, that is 1,200 square feet. The room on the opposite end, closest to the band shell, is another 1,200. And the middle one's a hair bigger, maybe 13. So the upper level of those 3 rooms, without the bar area, corridors, restrooms, et cetera, is in that 3,000, whatever that adds up to, 500, 600.
So for an EOC, is the estimate that we would need all of that square footage in that multipurpose room to operate an EOC, or could we operate an EOC within a 1,200 square foot, 1,500 square foot space?
that's up to the chief. Chief?
If you look at FEMA requirements for an EOC, they recommend a minimum of 80 square feet per person with a minimum of 50 square feet per person. So you'd have to figure you have all your department heads in there, their number 2 in command, secretaries, depending on the situation. So that's what you'd have to have. But also, given the fact that the majority of your emergency operations are going to include the police, you'd want your police facility right there as part of that.
I guess I have a question too. Is the community center on generator? So if we lost power during an emergency, the building's useless. This building would be fully generated. Another reason why it's important to have it at that type of place. Plus the IT area is fully, that's one building that will be up no matter what.
Unless we added a generator to the community center or
Well, then
kind of
why,
accommodate for that. If
you're basically spending $500,000 to do it there or do it here, to generate that facility.
I wouldn't necessarily agree that we'd have to spend $500,000 to generate the community center. But what I am getting to is that potentially the EOC operation associated with that space could be taken off-site. And if it's taken off-site, because I agree, as we continue to grow as a community, we probably want to address an emergency operations center.
Yeah.
So I'm not debating that. But where it goes and how it gets paid for and what those costs are, that's something that I think this body discusses. So if we don't need it, if it's not required there, if we would like it there, but it's not required there, that square footage potentially can come off. And that square footage associated with the multi-purpose function of hosting training and things of that nature doesn't necessarily have to occur within the police department itself. It could occur at the community center because we do have space associated with larger footprint, open area that could accommodate for mats and other activity that we could do within the department or invite others from outside of our area to participate in that training. So I'm kind of struggling with with a multi-purpose EOC operation there, which then leads to the municipal court. And the last time we had input from Judge Kay, he wasn't really sold on going off-site, and there's compelling reasons on both sides, but when we have the judge of our court stand up and say that he'd like it to stay here, and I'm not necessarily throwing this out there for debate. It just, for me, it weighs heavily on my thought process in regards to what's really required.
What was it, the administrative group? The administrative group voted to move.
I get it.
They're the ones that run the court. The judge is an elected official, just like we are.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's up to the administrative group to decide where and when the court operates.
And I'll-
Members of every community.
Yep. So, all right. So
There's 16 different people that voted.
sure,
They're appointed by their communities.
yep, and I understand that, and again, I'm not saying that obviously that doesn't weigh into the thought process, but when you have the head of the court, the judge, elected official, saying something contrary to what the rest of the body, there's conflict there.
Yeah.
So we have to work through that in regards to how we weigh that to what's put into that space. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're tasked with. And this all came about based on cost, and I know that we'll get to the cost impact associated with the space utilization with this building as we walk through this. So I'll defer that later.
Karen?
I mean, plus we would still have the safety issue, so keep that in mind. I have a couple questions. Can you go back to that screen that says, how did we get here?
Yeah.
On the HVAC?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a big number. Are we compromising anything by, you said this is kind of like a good, better, best scenario. Is this good? Is this better? Obviously, it's not best because we came down.
Right, I think this is a very good system. The idea that we had before would have been something that gave thermal comfort modulation, meaning almost every room would have a control. In this case, things would be zoned by use, which is fine. A lot of buildings have that. So that would have been the best. This is a very good system. So we're confident that the cost savings is one that we should select.
Are we compromising life expectancy? Say this is like a 20-year life expectancy, but the other one was 25?
I think that they're kind of different systems. I think with this, we would probably have more rooftop units, which means more maintenance, but they're less sophisticated systems. So the number of vendors who can, that could be contracted to maintain them, those costs will be less than a more sophisticated system where there are fewer people that are at that level of maintenance, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question is kind of a general question that I've kind of hypothetically posed this to some people, but I don't know what the answer is, and I've never really gotten one. Have we ever considered selling off the southeastern corner of that lot, like to another fast food place, and we would still have plenty of room for the public safety building. You'd still have a big grand entrance still into that. I drive by that all the time, and I look at that little chunk there, and I say, can we potentially ever sell that off and put that towards this?
I suppose potentially, but right now there's parcels along Wisconsin Avenue that are for sale that aren't selling. So it's like, you know, would it sell? I don't know. But right now, that's really not part of, that would be part of some alternative funding at a later date. It's not something that would have to be done right now.
Well, no, I know.
But that's, you know, who knows what's gonna happen in a couple of years, you know? See who was over here yet first. Kevin, you had your hand up earlier?
Yeah, a couple of things. 2 security gates. Are they there now, or are you creating those security gates?
There's a security gate here and a security gate here. They are not currently there. A number of facilities that we've done have put them in because individuals have left court or left the facility and keyed cars, and even though there's a camera and they eventually got caught, they still did it. So the idea is that this would keep them out of the squad parking area.
Okay, I'm okay with the security gate itself, but I'm referring to more the egress and the ingress.
Mhm.
Do we now have two ways in which we can, or which we will have to come into the courts? Is that there now?
There's two
or-
driveways there.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
and-
They're
and-
both there.
Yeah, they can come in
There's one
through
up by
here
the
and
lake.
park. The idea was that they could come in here and park and leave through this way. Or if they're going to the Sally Port, they would come in here and go right in.
There's two entrances, so.
Now, my other question is in reference to the average cost of a home. Somebody help me with that? I think somebody had mentioned,
That's 30-something.
isn't,
That's not
That could
actually
be
a
all
question
over the
for him.
board.
It should be a question for
21 is. Yeah.
20?
We're
It's
using the
220.
220.
21,000.
That,
One.
that sounds kind of low to me. I don't know.
That's the average
That's the
cost, because
average.
you have a lot of homes in the city, in the central part of the city, that are a lot less than some of the newer subdivisions.
Well,
So that's the average price per home.
what kind of an average is that? I mean, is it a mean, median?
Right, that was my next question.
It's an average, just an average, yeah.
Straight average.
Just, okay.
Because the homes that are now being built
Oh, yeah, that's
are
different.
much more expensive than 221,000. So that tells me that that's kind of a low estimate of where we're actually going to be at the end of the day.
There's a lot of homes on, yeah.
I understand it's 17 cents, but now it's 17 cents on 300,000 as compared to 221,000. All right, I'll come back.
Go ahead.
I want to go back to that square footage that we're talking about with the EOC, decentralized or centralized. Between that, that fitness tactical and the municipal court area and potential white space in that garage, say it's about 4,000 square feet. I know it's,
Yeah.
it's
about
about
right.
4,000 square feet. So if you take the 4,000 square feet times $196 average cost per square foot, you come up with $784,000.
What is that for?
Wrong.
So the municipal court
4,000
multipurpose area,
times 200, that's not right.
That's not right.
4,000 square feet times $196.
Are you talking about like white spacing it or something?
Well, you talked about
'Cause
white
yeah,
space and-
that's what this slide was meant to
Right.
represent. I think there's a little bit of a misnomer. In other words, this building is kind of like, let's say it's like this room, okay? And if I decide not to put carpet right here,
Right.
how much are we going to save? It's negligible, right? That's the concept behind that. Unfortunately, even though you're white spacing it, you know, you're not like new construction.
Right, I totally,
Okay.
So instead of 196, it's 150.
No, it's even less than
Even
that.
less than that.
It's way less than that.
but there's 4,000 square feet potentially between those three areas, probably a little bit more.
We identified it here as about 50. You know,
Show me
that
that
the,
again,
that the
please.
shell, well, I mean, so the idea here was if you take this slide, the shell has value and then, so that like the white space, again, you know, the carpet may only be $6, $7 a square foot.
Again, so the
We
potential,
didn't calculate that, so we could, as a small little study, we certainly could. I think, and I'd love it to add up to a bunch, but it doesn't.
well, so take the white space out. You got the municipal court and you got the fitness tactical area. Between those two areas, you're a little over 3,000 square feet. So, you know, I could redo the calculation.
About 600,000.
It's $588,000 of savings based on
I'm gonna go to
space
the
that
next.
we may not necessarily want or need there, but we're constrained to the footprint of the 39,800 square feet to fill it, is where we've put ourselves with utilizing the shell. Is that a fair statement?
It's
just-
not an unfair statement. If you leave a white space out, you're still gonna have to condition it
Right.
and light it and
And I'm
put
not
fire
taking that
protect,
white space into
fire
consideration in that
protection.
588,000, you know, because I get it. You're gonna have to do that. But if the council is like, you know what, the fitness tactical space, it's a nice want, but it's not a need. So how do you get rid of that? You necessarily can't, because that space is gonna be utilized for something within the 39,800 square feet.
I guess I'd ask,
there's
I guess I'd ask the chief if the fitness tactical space is something needed. I mean, that's a professional police officer's decision more than ours.
Sure, but is it required there, or could it be done at the community center? Just like the EOC, is it required there, or could it be done at the community
Well,
center?
do we want to make the community center a alternate police station? I mean, how much use are you getting out of the community center now that we would be interfering with?
But we're not talking about converting a portion of the community center into a police station. We're talking about potentially utilizing existing space to accommodate for an EOC if that situation occurs.
Well, I've not been to the community center, so my apologies, but this would be outfitted with AV and components to function as an EOC that I'm not sure community center.
Community center has AV.
Not
Well,
that they require for.
There's a difference between.
You can
a
harden
couple
lines
lines.
and you can, I mean,
Okay.
for.
You know, again, I'm not familiar with the building. I'm trying to help.
You're doing a great job.
We're just trying to help.
Yeah, no, just so you know, you're doing a great job, and I know you're getting grilled, and you're doing a great job providing the facts, and I appreciate that a ton, and I hope
Sure.
you don't think that any of this is.
Yeah.
is
No, we're
to-
good, we're good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move over. Derek, do you have anything?
I guess I'd like to say that I, like Lou, think that we filled up a building. And we took a building and we utilized the entire space. I mean, I see things like a hallway that's super wide between the municipal court and the admin court. That's got to be 15 to 20 feet. It's a good, wider than it would need to be to walk a couple of people side by each other. Anyway, my point is there was this needs study by WSM that said we needed 38,000 square feet, and we questioned the size on some of that back then. And we bought a building that was about the same size, and it doesn't surprise me that we used it all up. I think that the police are doing a great job of utilizing what they have today, and we definitely need a new facility. But everything that I look at in here is 7 to 10 times as big as what they have today. It's huge. It's a huge building. And if we can't get down to a number we can live with, I just think you're better off starting from scratch. It might not be the highest and best use for that site anyway, but if we got to the number that we need to be at, or that we wanted to be at, I would be willing to vote for it. But right now, we're not, and the only things that came out of there were, could we go to that page that shows what you guys came up with and what?
Sure. I guess I would start with this. I think the cops are taking a little bit of a beating, but their operations is about 23,000 square feet. And then you have the court.
Could we just go to where I wanted to go to, please?
Sure.
All right, so.
Was this the slide you wanted?
Yep,
Oh, okay.
exactly. So they came, what was the name of the other firm that?
WSM.
No, the schematic design budget.
Yeah, Kamosi, sorry.
Now, did they just did that first top portion, or did they agree with the soft costs and everything too?
Yeah, they did this top portion.
And were they including, did you tell them to exclude all the other costs in there? in what they came up
These
with?
items here?
Yep, those
Yeah.
items there. You said.
Yeah, in other words, yes, they came up with this hard cost number, and then you add in the soft cost to get that.
And the site modifications, that was probably your idea, or is it?
Correct, right, they were given that. So they came up with that number there through that process.
Okay, so they're 500,000 less roughly up top, and was that their idea to use a different heating system, or?
Oh, it was a team effort,
Okay.
but then
That showed up, but that was reflected in their numbers and not yours?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So all we did was go from probably, was it an in-ground heating system? or-
No, we didn't do geothermal.
Okay.
It was gonna be a VAV with hydronic, like reheat.
Hydronic heat, okay, it was, yeah.
Which is a great system to go, but the VVT system we're gonna go to will be very fine.
Right, and that's a good thing to, I'm happy you guys did that, but the other 500,000, we're just deferring our costs, so we really didn't take anything out of there, in my opinion. It's gonna have to happen sooner or later. So I guess if we ultimately end up going forward with this, my feeling is that we're gonna have to cut back in other areas in city funding of things. Because I refuse to go out and spend more money. If we're gonna spend more on this, we're gonna cut back in other areas and other things are gonna have to wait. Because it's unfair to the taxpayers, I think, to just keep spending money. So that's all I got for now.
Okay. Tom?
I represent the second district. In my votes, that's where I usually sway on another thing. I've got some questions for you. You're doing a nice job.
Thank you.
But you're about 1.6 million too high right now. But we'll work on it. And I'm a big supporter of the Blue and the fire department. Have been. You can look at my voting records, but I also have to look at my constituents. How much, that extra parking lot that you took out of it, what did you say, how much did you say it was worth, 600 grand?
Roughly 500,000, yeah.
That was close, that's not bad for me. So now you gotta add that $500,000 because that parking lot isn't as good a shape as the mayor said it is.
Well, I didn't say
Somewhere
it was
to
good,
add
I
in
said-
it, all right. I'm just telling you it's not. And then as far as how we're financing this, Schmidt's not here to defend himself, but the impact fees, the impact fees for the police department is $209. So, that's like, to possibly do, that's like 1,500 homes that you have to get the financing part down. Now, the court, you got them paying, like I said, they're already paying us $25,000 a year. So to me, that's $250,000 that should be taken out automatically as we're getting them for being in this beautiful location. I look at the $2 million savings by buying that building. When we had property that I fought to the end on that property that we owned, and Town of Summit put a place up for $7 million, and it's a gorgeous place out there. Lost my train of thought, but I do that a lot, don't I, guys? And that WMS study, goes out, and I said this before, that as a community we're pretty well squeezed. We've got some room for growth, and I don't think as much growth as these studies are saying that's going to happen. That's it. Thank you, but you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Go to Matt. Matt raises his hand first. We haven't heard from him for a while.
Yeah.
Man.
I won't, hopefully. Lori, I've got a question for you. On one of the slides, we said 58% of the total costs could be covered by impact fees. Tom just said our impact fee is only $209 per home. Is that correct? Do we know the answer to that?
Mark, you told me it was 290 10 minutes ago.
One of those fees.
Oh, I had 290.
I think Mark's telling me it's actually a little bit lower than that. Currently, we're doing an impact fee study. That's how I got the 58%.
So the impact fee may go up if we vote to increase the impact fee, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and what's the impact fee right now?
Mark's at 126.
Let's get Mark up here.
Thank you.
Let's bring the other finance guy up.
I had looked up real quick because we were talking about Town and Trust, and when we did their impact fees, they have about 120 units out there, multifamily, and the impact fee on those is $126 each. Then there's also another component for all the industrial and commercial spaces, which is then based on square footage.
Right. So this begs the question, the numbers you came up with for the total coverage of impact fees of 58% of the total debt, I mean, that doesn't work out. That service. If we built 10,000 new houses at 126.
And that impact fee dollar amount that we have right now is not what we would be recommending
okay, so
going
what we would have to
and
have
I don't have that number today.
I understand, but if we boiled 10,000 houses, okay, it's more houses than we have, I think, right now, at $1,000 impact fee, then you're at 10 million, which is the debt we're going to take out.
Okay.
So those impact fees are not gonna cover the cost of this. It's not even gonna barely scratch the surface. I don't know, first of all, we're never gonna raise the impact fee to $1,000. I question whether we'll go up to even 200 because that's a big jump. We had problems with other impact fees going up. So that was put into this packet, and I don't think that that number is an accurate reflection of what's going to be covered. We are not building 10,000 houses. Even at 200 or 300, I mean, this is gonna take us forever. We will literally build every single spot in the entire city up, and we still wouldn't reach another 10,000 houses. I don't know where you put 10,000 more houses. I mean, Newman's new construction out by me, which is not in the city, that's 350 units. It's gonna take them years to build that out, and who knows if they'll ever get done. So that is not a way we fund this. That is not something we should be considering as part of this process. The other thing I don't like, which is what we keep doing, is saying, well, we're gonna sell this building, we're gonna get some money here, we're gonna maybe get some money here. We said a year ago, and we earmarked this and said a maximum amount of $10 million. And we're still looking at the same complaints I had a year ago when we went over this WSM study. And I remember this was a very controversial document, and it was a very controversial discussion that we had about it. And I was at the tip of that spear saying, we don't need a fitness center to the tune of $110,000. We have a fitness center at the high school that's being paid for by tax dollars. The fire department's putting in fitness centers, and the police department wants to put in a fitness center. And we're saying, well, let's spend another 110 there. I don't think we went back and actually looked again at this closely enough to cut it to where we need to be. I said I'd spend $10 million. When we bought that building, and I remember vividly during this meeting saying, you've got another $8 million left. Get it done for the 8. And cut out the fitness center. Let's wait on moving the courts over and mothball that whole section. That's another $1 million. Just between those two things, we get much closer to budget. Right. And let's not play funny business with these numbers, okay? The lease will be paid to us. We're taking that debt out over the full project. They'll pay us the money back as long as they don't start incurring more costs, and then they'll be charging us money back. Look, this thing still does not make sense to me. We're not seeing enough information. There's square footage numbers for all these spaces that we're not seeing, and I want to know why. Why don't I know how big admin's going to be? What is admin now? 500 square feet, 1,000? Is admin going to be like 3,000 square feet? Is it going to be 10 to 15 times bigger than it is now? I mean, those are the questions we need to have in front of us answered. I don't think we need a fitness center for 600 square feet. Some of this stuff is just very, very large, and I think Derek hit it on the button. Some of these things are 3, 4, 5 times bigger than they are now. And Tom, you made a really good point, which I made, I think, a while back as well. Our community can only get so big. We're not going to add 10,000 homes, okay? I don't know how many we could add potentially in all the developable land, but that's a lot of homes to add. We're not going to become, a 60,000 person city in 30 years. It hasn't, we've grown fast, but we're not growing that fast. And to think that we need a building this big is way out there. I don't know where else to go with this. I really wish that our staff and the architects would have come back with something much closer to the budget number. Look, I mean, this is what we talked about a year ago. This isn't, we haven't been hiding the ball. We didn't give you 12 million and say, oh, well, now you're here, now it's only 10. And funding part of the cash contingency with cash is also baloney, because you can't take that off of the numbers that we're looking at. That's all part of the project. So I think we got to start over again. And you know what? So what? To get it right, if we have to start over again, we have to start over again. That building is probably too big for what we need, and maybe we made a mistake buying it. But maybe we can turn that around. That building could be used for other purposes, and we could find another site. The one other thing that we keep being told is the city council selected the Century building. That was our only option at that meeting, was to buy or not buy. There were no other options, which was my problem back then as well, that we had no other options. And we did buy it. We took it off the market, but we can fix that. Or we can get this thing in budget. If we were at about 10 million, I think we'd all vote yes. I can't do it. Kevin?
In the drawing, there's space for copy. Is that the copy room?
Copy center, probably, yeah.
Yeah, in this area, the key to this center of the building is that this is an area where the staff would intermingle, discuss things. That is a copy room, a centralized copy area. Also, right next to it is the mail room where they would get their mail. So the idea behind that space is that that's an area where everybody would go to and increase communication.
And do we know how big that space is?
Sure. So there's cabinets in there. There is the copier itself. There's millwork, et cetera. We have that area at 287.
Okay, here's my concern. I truly believe that we need a new police station. I do. Definitely. I think we do need one. I think what we have right now is not adequate to especially the growth that that we're experiencing here in Oconomowoc. My concern is the amount at which we're spending to do that, the space associated with that and what we're trying to throw in there, and then the fact that our tax bill will be higher and greater than I believe is really necessary at this time. I can't walk down the street and answer the question, why did we just spend $12 million? I can't do that. And it's not about me. It's really about all of us. Because at the end of the day, as a taxpayer here, we are all buying that space, bottom line. So that's very concerning. It's very concerning. I have to agree with everyone else that has basically stated in their own ways that we're kind of hiding in plain sight a lot of the costs associated with this building. Because what I'm hearing is, all right, we're going to lose 1.2, 1.3, and that's good. We're going to have some white space here. But ultimately, white space is going to be used. We will find a reason why we need that space. And we're going to have to increase our the ability of our HVAC system at some point. And maybe it's 3 years down the road, but then that's going to have a cost associated with it. So where are we again? We're back at the 12 million, or even higher for that matter. That concerns me an awful lot. I've said this on a number of occasions. As everybody knows here, I am a gym owner, and I have exactly a little over 10,000 square feet of space. I did not spend $130,000 any way, shape, or form. I don't see where this needs to be done in that fashion. I have a serious problem with that. Do I have a problem with them putting a fitness center in? At $110,000, yes. But do I have a problem with them putting a fitness center in if it's well under that? No, I don't. So my concern here is really the cost associated with this. I cannot go back to the people in this community and say, yeah, we spent $12 million. I know we said 10, but we spent $12 million, and you're going to really love it. And then at the end of the year, have them look at their tax bill with a house of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and say, whoa, wait a second, what just happened here? That's very concerning to me. I'm done, thank you.
Charlie? Charlie?
We've been studying the public safety building for a long time. We've looked at a lot of different sites, a lot of different buildings. We've discussed a lot of different areas, a lot of different places to put this. We agreed on the Century Building, voted for it. We picked this site to put the public safety building. And I think it was the right thing, the right decision at that time. And I'm supportive of this project, but Derek, I have to agree with you. There are some other things that are gonna have to be cut, be put off, because we're not gonna continue to spend that kind of money. I think we need to spend the money on this facility. I think we are spending a lot of time discussing space and size when we should be thinking 20, 30 years out. And that space is definitely gonna be needed at that time. We're taking a very short-sighted view of all of this so-called space and the cost of this space tonight.
Mike?
Where are we
Hang
gonna
on,
lose
hang on,
$2 million
hang on.
then? Where are we
Hey.
not gonna spend that? I'm sorry.
Mike?
I have to agree with you, Charlie. We voted for that site as a council. I think it went 7 to 8 or something, or whatever. I think Lou was the only one out. I've been in support of this. We were on the Protection and Welfare Committee. We've seen all the other developers and stuff like that. This was the best development group that came up. The chief's happy with everything that they've brought to the council. They've cut some corners here for us a little bit to get us down a little bit more on the dollar factor a little bit. It isn't something that we're going to need all at once, but I do think, I don't want to go nickeling and diming and say, okay, let's block off this with a piece of plastic and not look at this part of the wall. Let's do this a little bit later. I think we just got to get this and get it done. But I do think, Derek, that we do have to cut corners on future projects that we've got going on. And I think this is a project that we should really move forward with, so I'm in support of it.
Aaron?
Back to one of Kevin's comments where he said, you know, we have to walk down the street and try to justify this $10 million to citizens. I got out there in the last couple weeks and I talked to a lot of my neighbors, a lot of our constituents, and I kind of did an unscientific poll, but it really came to 50% on each. I had some people saying, hey, let's really try to keep this at the 10 million. I had another 50% of those people saying, let's do it right. You know, let's make this for the safety of our citizens, for the growth of our community, where they said, it's okay, we know we'll pay a little bit more taxes, but let's do it right. Do I want to spend the 12.2? No. I feel this is a good compromise, starting point in between. You know, we go from here, we send it out to bid, and we still have to approve it.
I look at it here too, the screen you have up. It's not 12.2, it's 11.2. And the police department itself, just for the police department, is at 10 million. I mean, with the inclusion of the building. The municipal court, I mean, we may have arguments about this. It's at 635, but that's through lease payments. The IT room is a citywide system. Our IT room now is inefficient and something that really shouldn't be used for a city of our size. So we're not borrowing 11.2, we're borrowing the 10.1, or actually the 10.7, but most of it is being charged off to, part of it's getting charged off to the court lease. So we said, and we knew this all along, and it was projected last year, that the average cost per person, per household, average household was $75. And that's exactly what it came in at. So it's not a surprise. I mean, it came in at $75 per average household, you know, the 17-cent mill rate. So it's not something that was really unthought of. I mean, it's something that we knew. Would it be great if we come in at $8 million? Yeah, it'd be great. But for what we need and what the police department's gonna need in the next, you gotta remember, this is for the next 20, 25 years. And in 25 years, none of us will be here, but that police department will still be there.
I'll still be alive.
And well, we'll all be here, but we won't be here.
Well.
Maybe not. But what I'm saying is we have to look at something for the future. Back in '83, when they built this one, it's been 35 years. And was a smart decision back in '83. So it's something we have to look forward, or we have to look ahead and say, is this make sense for the next 25 years? The bonding's 25 years, or 20 years? we have to look and say, is this going to get us through that time period? And I think this size of facility will do that. We'll go to Lou first, because he
Okay,
had
that's
his
fine,
hand
yeah,
up
yeah.
first.
Thanks.
And then we're gonna call the vote soon.
Cool. So I just want to review the numbers. We had $11,247,000. We have a deferred site work of $500,000 that I think we all agree is going to have to be done sooner than later. And if we're talking about doing it right and cutting corners on other things, you might as well just put it in there, right? So that would take you to $11,747,000. And I'm not advocating that we spend an extra $500,000 on the site, but it's going to be done, and it's going to be done sooner than later. You take $390,000 of contingency, and the reason you have a contingency is because generally you dip into it, right? And we're going to pay for that out of cash. If you add that into the mix, you're at $12,137,000.
That's already in there. It's already in there.
The 11?
The 390 is already in there. It's already in there.
Okay, so
Yeah, it's in there.
so you're at 11,747,000.
Yeah.
Yep. That's 17% over budget, our hard cap of 10. And this is programmed for 25 years, right? This is not like we're talking about, this is a 5-year program.
Right.
We're gonna have to come back and do it again soon. This is a 25-year program. I don't see us getting the value of going over our budget by that much, and because we've constrained ourselves to 39,800 square feet, we can't adjust that down to hit our budget and not short the police department, but maybe decentralizing some of the features and functions associated with the EOC, and that doesn't even include what you can do with the property itself. And I just took a look at the programming, and I've shared this with the mayor, so it's not a surprise. And I just want to show that we do have options, because we have had some conversation about the Century Building was the only thing that we had to vote up or down on. We do own the property. We don't need to constrain ourselves to this particular site. We can take a look at putting this police department on Wisconsin Avenue, freeing up the water frontage for other development, private or public, and taking that money, which would have been allocated for this project, to offset costs associated with this project, as opposed to some other sale of land that occurred in the city that could have been allocated for other projects. And do something good with this site, not just the building. And I think we should have that conversation as council before we finalize a decision to spend 17% minimum more than what we have already agreed to. And Mayor, if I'm wrong, I'll stand up and admit I'm wrong, that we should overspend on what we have earmarked. But at this point, I don't feel that I can do that.
Evan?
On a brighter note, I had a conversation with a few individuals, and I have a question. We've got a lot of moving parts here. We've got the police station where it is right now, and I forgot, what's the square footage on that?
4,300.
43? Okay. Then we've got another area that is housing all of our impounded cars, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got another area over here that is holding all our bicycles, I think it is.
They're kind of scattered all around.
Right. I mean, we've got places all over Oconomowoc that we are kind of housing a lot of things which are very unsecure at this point. I like the idea of bringing them all in-house, because what that does is it brings about more of an element of security than where it is right now. We have no idea what's happening right now, this second, at the impound. We've got no clue. So I like that idea. I like bringing everything in-house. The question still remains, do we still need 39,000 square feet. So my question to whoever is, do we have an idea of what the square footage is at the impound and at the bike and these other places to bring all that in? Do we have an idea of what that is? We know what the police precinct is here, but do we know these other areas?
Well, it's kind of included in the garage space, in the evidence area and things like that, of what space they need.
But right now, though,
I'll let the chief, I'll let the chief explain it.
do you understand my question? As in, how much space do we have right now at these other places?
Well, it's hard to say because currently our impounded vehicles are stored at Department of Public Works.
Right.
And that number fluctuates. You know, when the first snowfall comes, we'll be towing a number of vehicles off the road. We also store other abandoned vehicles at that location. They're not evidentiary vehicles. So that's where they're stowed on DPW's property. We try moving those vehicles out as quick as we can. We then have another location where we store bicycles, bulk items, and then evidentiary vehicles. Right now in there we have a vehicle from a homicide. We have a vehicle from a serial burglary, and our garage space is full. If we had an additional vehicle, we wouldn't have space.
So how big is that garage?
Where's the garage?
Well, we don't really
That
have
end
to
of-
say where the garage is.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, I just
Evidence,
want
you
to know
don't
how
really
big
wanna
it
tell
is.
everybody
See,
where
because
it
I'm
is.
trying to get a collective idea of how much space we
Well, bring it here.
actually have if we went inch by, inch equaling inch. Throw a number out there, just humor me.
Okay.
Well, Mark works on that number. In addition to that, when we talk about evidence, down in the basement, we have our bulk, or not bulk evidence, but our major case evidence storage. By state statute, we're required to maintain evidence for the duration of someone's incarcerated and off probation and parole before we can release it. So we have that evidence all stored downstairs. We also have our records area down in the basement. So when our clerks want to go and access records, they have to go down into the basement.
And do we know how big that, or is that already in the 2,400?
Well, you know, you look at the evidence area and that shows everything that's, you know, what we need, I guess.
Well, I know what we need, but I'm asking, what do we have now? Please, just humor me with this.
Not a lot.
If you want.
Very hard to tell.
It's minimal. I mean, and it's
Right, so
scattered all
I
over
guess-
the building.
I guess that's my point. My point here is we do need to move everything in, but the question I have, which I cannot answer at this point, is where are we right now?
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, it's not what we have today or need today, it's what we need for the next 20 to 25 years.
I understand that, Mayor, I
So
do.
we have to make sure that we allocate enough to make sure that we have enough, so we don't have to do this again.
I understand that, but I don't know where I'm starting from.
I don't know how much.
You also need to look at our, beyond the total space, the efficiency and effectiveness we currently have with things stored off-site down in the basement. You know, what one officer could currently take care of, or a clerk could take care of, it requires two officers, and we have to release a vehicle from impound. Our clerk takes care of the paperwork at the window. We then have to pull an officer off of the street to go to the impound lot, release that vehicle. Hopefully it'll start, otherwise you have to call a tow truck, and then you take an officer off the street for that period of time. And when your minimum manpower on day shift is 2, second shift is 3, evening shift is 2, that ties up a lot of our resources when they could be out patrolling your neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna try to,
I have a question.
oh, you have a
before we call
question
the vote,
first?
don't you?
Yeah, that's right, she had her hand up first.
Um,
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so if we vote tonight to advance this to the bidding, and then it still has to come back to us for approval,
Exactly.
can we then go back to the drawing board with some of this?
Well,
If
like you
we
said, some
want
of the-
to, if we need to,
Some of the things they said they'd have as options.
right?
So if there was something that we didn't want to do, or if, put it this way, if everything came in 10% below what we wanted,
Mhm.
we'd be fine. If it came in 10% higher, then we could say, no, we're going to reject the whole thing.
Okay,
But that's our choice at that point.
and if we choose to advance this tonight to the bidding process, does this still potentially give us the opportunity to look at other options, like Lou was saying?
Not really.
Okay,
At
just-
that
okay.
point, you're pretty much dedicated into this site, but that doesn't mean if the bid comes in at $12 million, that's way more than what we anticipated, and I think everybody here, including me, would vote against it.
Yep.
Because that's not what we wanted.
12.
So,
Well, yeah.
I mean, we're looking, what we're voting on tonight is to advance the process so that they can actually go out and get the drawings and get the bids. It doesn't finalize anything. It's a resolution that says we're gonna move forward with the process.
And
How
dur-
much
and
would it
during
cost
that-
us?
And during that process, we will get another cost estimate from Camosi Construction as well.
Right.
How much is it gonna cost us to send it to bid? I guess that's my,
We're already paying for it. The $480 that they've charged us, or charged
if we
us,
scrapped it now, we owe them 480, is that what you're
Sure.
telling me?
it's a contract.
We've got a contract.
It's a contract. That's why I'm saying if we just move the process forward, we can see where we're at. We're already invested the 480 with the company.
Even if they don't do the whole build-out of it?
Yeah.
Can,
Is that true?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to.
Because,
I believe so. I mean, the contract was for the 480 for this part of the process.
well, no, the 480 is for the whole build-out, all the plans and the construction management. So I'm confident that if we were gonna look at using them again, that they would say, hey, we're not gonna charge you the full 480 and not do any work other than this. I mean, that would be,
What we typically do
Tough to get.
is we divide the project into phases.
Right.
And that's why we're at schematic design.
right.
And then the next phase happens. We meet as a group, we get, internal approval for that. We get an estimate, so that at any point, if you do terminate, there's language in the contract that, you get paid to that point in the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're
And
not
that's
into
the-
it for a full 80,
Right,
480
and
now.
that's a typical way a professional contract works, because if the bids come back and it's $15 million, of course, we can't do it.
Right.
So here's the problem with some of the comments about, well, we need to tighten our belts later on, or maybe we'll do something, and no. That does not happen. In my experience as an alderman here, that does not happen. We have attempted to curb budgets. We just bought a park that we're gonna take years to fill out on the other end of town that cost us $1 million plus. We bought a, Chinese restaurant here for $1.25 million because of screw-ups of past councils and past mayors. And I can't even, I don't know what the budgets are gonna come back, because we're almost in the budget season already, but I'll bet you any money that those budgets do not come back under what they are right now, that they're not levy neutral, that they're levy positive. In fact, I'll bet you it's gonna be more like 2 to 3% above. So the idea of tightening our belts more is not gonna happen. It's not reality. Here's the reality. We said 10 million, we need to stick with it. And there's things in this project that can still get cut out. I think we need to stick with the building we have. Look, I voted for it, okay? That was a tough vote. I voted to keep the building, but we need to figure out ways to get this thing down to where we need it. That's what we promised the people. When we put that money out there, we vote on this stuff. We have these discussions. It's kind of a promise, right? It's kind of a contract with the people that we're representing, that we're not gonna say $10 million a year ago, and then now it's gonna be, 11.2. But then maybe next year we'll do the parking lot, that's gonna be another 500 grand, and maybe we'll add something else that's another 200. Yeah, that's not what we do as representatives. So I'm gonna vote against that. I don't care if you call a vote at this point, but,
I don't call the vote, you guys do.
yeah, I know.
Do we have any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Now I can call the vote. Call the roll.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Nay.
Alderman Stray.
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski.
nay.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Fails.
5 to 3, yes.
So I guess, where do we go from there? Project fails? Yep, it's done. Okay, moving on. Unfinished business. Consider act on ordinance to amend the planned development ordinance PD 1908 and general development plan of the preserve at Prairie Creek. This is the second reading. We need a motion to approve the ordinance and give it for its second reading.
Motion made?
Second.
Second.
John, you want to update us on the,
Yes.
how he's going.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As you're all aware, at the last meeting, there was a reasonable amount of discussion related to the public benefit related to this project, and specifically what the city was asking for, or staff was asking for, and what the project was offering. So the first exhibit I have up on your screen today is the original offer from Wangard's Development, the Preserve of Prairie Creek, that was offering a little over 12 acres. A little over 7 of it was wetland, another 4.5 to 5 was upland, and then the orange line that you see would have been the public easement that would allow us to connect our Rosenau Creek Trail to the boulevard that you see on this particular layout. After lengthy discussion with them, and positive discussion, they've come to the conclusion that they are willing to pay the full impact fee, which is one of the things the city was asking for. And then in this next exhibit, you can see the orange line, which was the original easement area that they were offering, plus the additional purple line, which is the additional easement that will make the connection. So they're willing to grant this 20-foot wide easement for a 10-foot wide asphalt trail with 5-foot grass on the side, as well as pay the full impact fee to move forward. So the next exhibit I want to share with you shows the connectivity that this really provides our community. And move this up a little bit. So you can see on the northern end, and I'm using the cursor, get this right here, huh, Mark? There we go. So this is Wood Creek Park. This blue line shows the approximate trail location. We're still in design. That would come all the way down, and this is that midpoint where the culvert crossing is, and this part here is the easement that they are offering at this time. You can see the connectivity to the residential areas that currently exist. Over in this area is the Piggly Wiggly Shopping Center. There's Subway, Quick Trip, etc. in that area. You also can see a yellow line here, which is an existing asphalt trail, which was part of this development that is public access, so we can connect there as well. And as we move further to the south, towards Lisbon Road, you can see that we continue all the way down from the connection point and ultimately connect at this location. So the connectivity was one of the things that was important for this easement, and Mr. Wangard's offer to the city is, again, the full impact fee and the easement at this time. One of the things he also was asking for was an agreement of some, at least in terms of the city taking a conscious effort to do all the proper design and management and maintenance of this area to preserve the Coldwater Creek, Rosenau Creek. He's been passionate about it. He's done everything he has been required to do by the DNR on his side, and he is expecting the city to do the same. I can tell you that during our design process with our consultant, we will use the Wisconsin DNR Watershed Management Program Guide, which establishes the standards for trail development in wetland areas, as well as using best management practices for water quality that's also through the DNR. These are standard practices to preserve and protect cold water creeks, wetland areas, et cetera. So I think we, as a city, we would be committed to do that regardless, but I want to share that we're planning on doing that through this process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any
A
comments?
question for you, John. Because I heard some things about what you'd have to do in those wetland areas. You would either have to build basically a boardwalk over it, is that correct? To preserve the wetlands, or you could mitigate the wetlands with buying land somewhere else. Is that? Would this,
those are both.
By agreeing to this and saying we would do everything we can to preserve the wetlands, are we saying that we're going to build boardwalk instead of that other
No,
option?
we would only build a boardwalk or boardwalk sections in areas that would require it. The majority of the pathway, which is on the west side of the creek, where the blue line is going to be an asphalt trail. There'll be small sections, and we're in the design process right now.
Okay.
That will be boardwalk, but this will not be all boardwalk, not anywhere close.
I was just worried about the cost of that. We're committing ourselves to a cost that's way higher because.
I'm confident, based on where we are in the process, that we will minimize the amount of boardwalk needed and only apply it where required, and we'll be able to still meet all those design guidelines and standards.
You see where I'm going, though? If we agree to
Absolutely.
maintain the wetlands and then everything's got to be boardwalk, if that was
No,
all. I don't know where the wetland lines are.
The trail, for the most part, will be outside the wetlands.
All right.
Boardwalk sections will be built when we have to cross it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other
Question
comments?
for John. Is this footpath and bike path?
The pathway that we're establishing in this layout here, the blue and orange lines are all going to be either a paved asphalt trail and/or boardwalk as we cross wetland areas for biking, walking, hiking, however you want to use it. We may add some additional grass mowed walking areas within this corridor when appropriate. But as far as, and I'll go back to the other exhibit here, as far as the yellow area on this first exhibit, that property is still owned by Vanguard Properties and the Preserve. So they do have some mowed walking trails in here, but that's private property. It's their choice on how they want to manage and continue to move forward with it. But we will have that easement that will allow the general public to get through to those other areas.
Yeah, I'm not a real big fan of rezoning for properties and things like that. And I think when they were here last week, 2 weeks ago, they were talking about their current capacity is like 98%. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. And then they also were talking about accommodating more apartments for the jobs in this area. And I don't know that the jobs in this area can accommodate like $1,000 or $1,100 a month rent.
More than that.
Any other questions? Lou?
The connectivity is a very important piece. It looks like the connectivity that we're really talking about here is going to service that development more so than potentially the overall community using the blue line going north-south, because I would imagine that blue line going north-south will then eventually end up crossing Z and then work its way up to the regional park and things of that nature. So there was some discussion last meeting about what they would do with that property if this didn't move forward. And I know they're here. I don't know if there's been any more thought associated with what potentially could happen with that property if this doesn't move forward. This did come to council a couple of years ago, and it was voted against at that time to allow for that apartment to go in due to concerns associated with the density, and I don't know what's necessarily changed between last time it was voted against and today.
What is Mr. Chair, is the question related to the orange piece?
No, the question's related to the location where the apartment's gonna go?
Yes, okay.
What would happen if this didn't get approved?
Okay, it's, the overall zoning allows the density. It's the modification to the zoning, but the underlying zoning allows this type of density. This is actually one of the lowest density projects in the city. It's a multifamily because we have significant green area, including both buildable and non-buildable. So we don't have an alternate use for it right now. We have had other people talk to us in the past about things like assisted living, whether or not it could be elderly. And the reason why we fought so hard about that trail is because, again, we did want to preserve that cold water stream. That doesn't necessarily mean boardwalks versus pavement on the west area that we've already dedicated. We did want to make sure that we're not putting asphalt right next to a cold water stream. So we're not dealing with runoff, we're not dealing with hot water from black asphalt going into it. So we don't have a specific use for it if it doesn't get approved.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I came into the meeting last time and I was opposed to this. I changed my mind and I thought, well, at least it gives us a couple more weeks to think about this. But they came 2 years ago, and for whatever good reason, council turned them down. I don't think this is workforce housing. It's very expensive, high-end housing. And I'm opposed to creating more density in that area. And that easement is going to go right between a building and the clubhouse. Okay, when my husband and I were building our current home, we actually rented in there, and it's a wonderful place to be, and we were there for about a year. But I don't feel like this is such a great overall benefit to the public for that one little area. I never had an issue getting around to the park or getting over to Piggly Wiggly or seeing people from the other subdivision getting around into those areas. And if people are coming from those subdivisions through that easement, they're coming out right into a parking lot at the Preserve Apartments. I wouldn't allow my kids to walk that far and go into a parking lot and then have to maneuver their way still around into the Piggly Wiggly Plaza. I just don't see a great benefit to the overall public to going forward with this.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, one of the things that changed from 2 years ago to now is I changed my vote because I did not allow, I didn't vote in favor of, I think, adding the extra apartments. We didn't want the density back then, and that was some of the discussion. I think they need the overlay. I believe they need the overlay because the zoning actually doesn't allow for the current density, and they need to go a little bit above what we currently allow in the area, which is why he's got to come, otherwise he could just build. Is that right, Jason? That's why they need the overlay, because technically it is over.
It's a little bit over.
Land use allows
It was
for
like
it, but not.
6.14 or something like that.
It's the land use plan allows for up to 6 dwelling units per acre, and this will put them at 6.14. So they're slightly exceeding the land use plan targeted density for this parcel. The zoning allows up to 8 units per acre, and they have the zoning to do this, but they also need an exemption for that setback as well. You know, in the proximity,
So zoning allowed, the zoning allowed it, but the planned use
zoning allowed
development,
it, but the land use plan really said 6 units per acre out here.
So hopefully I can convince some of the other aldermen to vote in favor of the plan. I think it passed last time in the first reading. I think when I think about my development out by Pabst Farms there, when the developers did all that, and they were very poor, and they have continued to be poor about connecting, you know, the shopping malls and the commercial and all that. This helps that, you know, and it creates that connectivity. Not to mention we get the impact fees, which we were just complaining we need more impact fees. So, you know, we get that $48,000 in impact fee. That's huge. You know, we need to use that for potentially a future police station, potentially, you know, a new pier down at City Beach or whatever. So I think that's important. But the connectivity is, I mean, look at that area is a neat area. I think our goal has been in the city to connect Rosenau Creek all the way to the big master park, which of course I was opposed to, but if it's there, we might as well connect it and have walking trails all the way through there and let people use it. So I think there is a public benefit there. I think we should vote in favor of allowing this and getting the easement and the park impact.
And I agree with you, Matt, about the public benefit about the walking, because that's one thing we really want to push in that area, in all areas, is the ability to walk to where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean,
instead
so
of having to get in the car and drive.
So the problem with what Pabst did is, you know, and I had a big problem with the farm and Fleet went in because, or the Fleet Farm, sorry, I always call it that. Because and one of my concerns was making sure there was connectivity, which they still haven't done a very good job of with the Fleet Farm, but that helps bring people in, and it lets people move around and walk and bike and take, you know, hoverboards or whatever the heck they want to do, and I think we should let that connectivity occur.
Well,
so.
and we're all going to each have our own opinions on this, and they're going to sway one way or the other, and I just don't see that this I love connectivity. I walk all over the city, but I just don't think that this connectivity outweighs my opposition to creating more density in the area.
Derek?
I originally came here thinking I was opposed to the density, but then when I did see the connectivity, the connectivity out there is important, I think, and there's going to be, I believe, that's zoned out in front there for more commercial, isn't it? To the
whole front.
yeah. So it's going to provide easier access for everybody in the Bird subdivision, Wood Creek, I believe it is. I think
it provides it for everybody in the area.
and it also provides connectivity for the people who live in the apartments, which are residents of the city,
Yes.
to get to the parks over here easier.
I
So-
think you'd be really surprised, though. We lived in that unit right there. And it's, you know, Z is all sidewalk now, where it used to not be. It's very easy connectability. If you go out there and drive it or walk it, it is still very,
Yeah, but then you got to get close to the moving traffic.
Hang on, don't debate between yourselves.
Sorry.
Karen, you have to be recognized before you talk. Did you have your hand up, Charlie?
Yeah, I did. I was in support of this at the first reading and will be in support of this again. I don't see any reason at all density-wise or whatever, to not put that apartment building in on the end of those, the rest of those that are there. It just makes sense to put that apartment in that location. It puts it over the density a little bit. It's very minor. The connectivity to me means the world. It helps just being able to go and ride out there, walk out there and connect to all of that will be perfect.
It's cool.
In regards to the impact fee, the $48,000 associated with that is if I'm wrong on this, I think that path is estimated to be $80,000-ish, and $48,000 of that would be offset with this impact fee. Is that?
Well, park impact fees are required to be used for projects that are part of the park impact fee plan, and this would qualify for that. So to answer your question, the estimated at 50% is the cost of the development of that trail, which is from this easement, which is not in the parking lot, it goes to the road. Granted, it does go between two buildings, down and to get to the crossing is approximately $80,000, but that's at a 50% estimate, and we're still fine-tuning things. So it may be less, it could be a hair more, but so 48 is approximately 50%.
So this is a continuation. So I stay in touch with what you have going on as a developer, not only here in Oconomowoc, but within Southeast Wisconsin, and I think you do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
But really, this connectivity piece is going to benefit the residents of your current development. You're basically going to pay for half that trail, because the connectivity is really what's driving the decision to allow for the density variance. And you know, if this didn't pass, it would be a benefit to your development and the value of your development to connect to the trail system. You're already agreeing to allocate $48,000. You'd need to come up with potentially a little less than half, depending upon how final estimates were come in. And you could still do something great with that little red square that doesn't necessarily associate with increasing the density. Again, you do a great job with what you have, and I would trust that you would do a great job with what is in front of you to make that development that you hold the best that it can be, because that's kind of what you do elsewhere, I've seen.
Well, I appreciate the comments about our firm. We have connectivity on our end of it with the walking trail that's already there. It provides connection from the areas west of the creek to the Piggly Wiggly. We have access all the way up to Z. We put in sidewalks up through that area. And one of the reasons why we originally bought this property was, again, part of it was to protect the creek. And for those of you who have friends that are engineers, this is considered a model engineering project in the state of Wisconsin, because the water is reverse engineered to go to the west, comes back into the creek then as cold water. We wanted a site here that gave somebody an opportunity to not only live in a very desirable community, but also to enjoy the nature that's there and some of the natural attributes. And that's one of the reasons why you live in Oconomowoc. It's, you know, again, I appreciate it if you voted for it. If you vote against it, that's your choice.
Thank you, Stu. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Nay.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
You sweet talker, Matt. Aye.
And Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Miller is gone.
Yeah.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Okay, moving on. Next item is consider act and ordinance to create section 1.46 of the municipal code regarding housing authority for elderly persons. This is for its second reading. Need a motion to approve the ordinance for its second reading?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on this? We went through this last time. I think we're pretty well set.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yeah, I was opposed to it last time. I'm still going to be opposed to it. I don't want to create a housing authority just so that the Presbyterian homes can eliminate having to pay sales tax.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, so that passed. Moving on, consider act on ordinance amending section 1.36, paren 1.a, of the municipal code regarding plan commission membership. This is the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
And what this does is this will eliminate the city engineer as a voting member. If this passes tonight, it does not take effect until after the next meeting. So the planner will, or the city engineer will still be a member of the plan commission the next meeting. And after that point, then we will appoint a new member. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, under new business, consider act on approving Elderly Housing Authority bylaws and rules of procedure. We need a motion to approve the bylaws and rules of procedure.
So moved.
Who's going to explain? There's Lori.
I've got this. So now that you have passed the resolution and the ordinance to create the Elderly Housing Authority, the next step is to approve the bylaws for that body. The bylaws, the proposed bylaws were in your packet. They are fashioned after the CDA, and you will see that the bylaws really is how the committee conducts itself and also sets out those things that they need to bring back to council for approval. So it's similar to the CDA. You'll see that in order for, they will vet a project and they will make a recommendation to council. Any acquisition of land, issuance of debt, spending of more than $10,000, any amendments, deletions, or changes to the bylaws, these all have to come back for your approval. The council and the newly formed Elderly Housing Authority both have to approve these bylaws.
Just two real quick questions. One, do we have to leave 10,000 in there? Can we make the expenditure lower of funds? I don't like in acquiescence to some degree what Mr. Shaw said, Alderman Shaw. I don't like having additional authorities. I've always been kind of opposed to the CDA, and I think there's a little too much power there. But I think can we cut that down to like 1,000?
You can cut it down to 0.
Well, then I would move that we.
It should say $1.
Well, I mean, I want to be reasonable. If they need to get a study or something, you know.
Say 5,000.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more like 1,000, and then
1,000 's
anything
fine.
more than that, we'd need to come back
Their
to us.
only function under the statute is to be the conduit to allow for these borrowings. They will never be expending any
Well,
dollars
then
on their own
then let's
authority.
move that to 0. Then I'm gonna.
Or strike it completely.
Yeah, then I'll move that's fine. I'll move to strike subpart 2D, just completely strike it out.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Okay, we'll vote on the amendment on that. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, so now we have an amended agreement, bylaws. Any other questions on the bylaws? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amended bylaws. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Okay, mayoral appointments to newly created Elderly Housing Authority with council confirmation. So tonight I am going to be appointing Alderman Spiegelberg as a representative, myself. And the reason I'm appointing these other people is for specific reasons. Dick Whalen, who is a senior citizen and well-informed in the community, and he would be a good member of this group. Mary Blaska, who is the chairman of the CDA, and Dean Frederick, who is a member of our Plan Commission. So I'm appointing those members, and we need council approval, so.
I'll make a motion to confirm the appointments.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other questions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye. Okay, we will be having our first meeting on Thursday, Thursday?
Yes.
Thursday at 3 o'clock.
6th.
Okay. Staff reports?
Nothing
No
this
staff
evening.
reports, reports and comments from Alderman? None, reports and comments from the mayor, I have none. Next item, going to closed session per Wisconsin Stats 19.85. Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating and negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public businesses whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed sessions. This is regarding the We Properties lawsuit. So we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
We're adjourned from open session.